when it all comes down to it, what we're really talking about with our kids is how do our values align with the way we represent ourselves in person as well as even online. Like safety, friendship, honesty. And then if you represent it back to these tools and like, do I feel safe on this? Maybe I should question that. Is this being honest with me? What can I do to really confirm that or not? Actually building those values into the way you discuss media and tech in your relationship with it, how you explore new aspects of technology, it makes it, one, more approachable, but two, it gives you a foundation that you can parent with and not feel like you have to know every single thing.
We already know what helps. Connection is the cure. It's our deep and meaningful relationships that give us hope and healing. Welcome to This Helps. I'm Marlon Morgan. Join us as we practice authentic and vulnerable conversations that inspire us to go deeper with the people in our own lives.
I'm Hannah Ravitch, and we're so excited to have Vice President of Education Outreach and Engagement at Common Sense Media, Merve Lapus, with us today. With over 25 years of experience in education technology and professional learning, he has helped bridge digital citizenship and impactful professional development to over 90,000 schools and 1.3 million educators nationwide. He's also a dedicated community leader, serving on multiple boards focused on education, health, and the arts. Merve joins us today to share how digital literacy and education can impact children and families everywhere.
Merve, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Hearing it, and it's like, when you hear it back, you're like, oh man, I'm doing a lot. It really feels good to hear it. That sometimes you just get so mired in the work, you believe in it, but then to hear it back, it's like, oh, okay.
1.3 million.
That's great. Yeah. We've been at it for a bit. The organization's been a huge, dedicated and focused team. And, so it's not just me, but I love being able to work with such a committed group to impact as many educators as we can with our resources.
I think a lot of people know Common Sense Media and have used it in different ways over time. I'm not sure that they really understand kind of the breadth of what you all do and how long. I think, did it start in the 80s?
Yeah, so 20 years now. So, okay. It's a little after then, but it definitely feels like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's been around since I have understood what the word media was.
Yeah. So, we're well into our 21st year now, and it's gone from really trying to support families initially, just to kind of get a better understanding of, all right, there's all this media now coming into our world. Back then it was just television and like music.
Yeah, I'm thinking like all this media now 20 years ago versus now.
Bring that back a little bit. Yeah. But even then there was problematic content that was coming out, and how do we talk about kind of the new music that's out there in the world and what does that mean to the way that's informing our kids? Video games and the rise of video games and multiplayer games, let alone, the smartphone and now AI. So technology continues to kind of innovate and grow, and the implications of technology on kids, families, and schools really continue to kind of rise as top priorities.
So the mission of Common Sense Media, how would you kind of sum that up for us?
So we are a nonprofit organization. Our whole focus is really dedicated to improving the lives of kids and families by providing trustworthy information, education, and an independent voice when it comes to navigating the world of media and technology. And that means really, how do we provide enough information so we feel empowered to make the right decision for our kids, for our families, and for our students?
Yeah, I've used it for years. I think being a school counselor and being able to tell parents about Common Sense as a resource and as a free resource. Yeah. There are so many things associated that you all do when it comes to policy, providing well-researched, solutions for parents, like you said. When I have a 3-year-old and an 11-year-old, so the 11-year-old, anytime he wants to see a movie or, he says something about a game or some kind of media that he wants to sort of bring into his life, a lot of times we'll go together and be like, let's look at more of an objective view of this. Is it something that's going to be helpful for you or not? And so far that's working. I understand, we're still pretty early on in the process of him making his own choices and decisions, but it also helps me understand his world a little bit better too.
100%. I mean, I think that's really the intention. Is it is great when families can use it as a tool to kind of identify where their child's at, right? Because I think the reality is we want to provide recommendations around age ranges that it's typically appropriate for.
Sure.
But what's most important is that you know your kid.
Yeah.
You know what is going to be right for them. What is a right for a 13-year-old might be different for 10 different 13-year-olds just based on fear of certain types of content to certain kind of types of jokes that might just go completely over their head. So just getting a sense of understanding, all right, what is right for them? What is right for another? I mean, that's the best that we could do is really just arm them with enough information.
Yeah. Well, you started in education, right? I mean, you
I feel like it's been forever now, but yeah.
Tell us about that, because you didn't just end up one day, you're doing a lot to influence the way we are able to inform ourselves, and as people who are looking out for our families and the people we love, but also ourselves, you're doing a lot to kind of consume the media for us and then let us know if it's going to be something that is worth our time now with all of the choices we have. I think that's another good way that we've used it in the past. It's kind of like, all right, well, now 2 hours out of the day to go to a movie theater is like, I love it, but you certainly don't want to have to leave early or have it be like an experience. Like, I want it to be cool. It's expensive.
Yeah. It's not like something that before, if you feel like you used to do the movies all the time, and now family 4, you're dropping like $100.
Yeah.
Like really easily.
And it's like, how is there an expensive restaurant in this movie theater? Like
Totally.
my kid's like, can I get some popcorn? I'm like, I don't know. Was it $30?
Yeah.
But so you started with a passion to kind of change kids' lives for the better.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through it.
Sure. So I think to provide some context into how I found myself into this space. So as an organization, we have 3 main pillars in our work. We have the Common Sense Media side, which a lot of families know about us, the ratings and reviews and evaluations of content. And then we've got the Common Sense Education work, which really is how do we empower educators and provide resources so that schools can really directly support kids to think critically and participate responsibly with the media and technology in their lives, especially as we're using them for so many instructional purposes and needs. But then also build teacher confidence in how to understand these resources and tools. And then, like you mentioned, there's that policy side, recognizing that policy is has to play a major role in helping us to catch up with the speed at which technology is moving, because our kids are using them, even though it's not designed for them in many ways. There's direct implications in the way that our kids are being affected by this stuff. So how do we then support identifying and bringing the right voices from families to schools to communities to really be kid partisan? How do we develop policy that's centering kids? And this is all couched under research and ensuring that we're operating off of real informed information. Now, all that to be said, how did I find myself into this work? Education's always kind of been a big part for me. I immigrant coming in to the U.S. I mean, my primary language wasn't English. It took some time. But when I came into the system and came into school, it's around 5-6 years. And school became kind of like that one outlet that was a constant for me. Like it was a consistent space.
Yeah, I think it is for many of us.
Yeah. And so it was one place that helped me to kind of feel a little, comfortable. I didn't really see education as my kind of direction of work. Growing up a Filipino-American background, and my parents intended for me to be a nurse, doctor, engineer, something. It's a narrative that many of us are probably familiar with. And it just kind of fell into something where I was after university, had an opportunity to kind of really explore what it would be like to be in pre-service. And so I was working in 7th grade, which was really awesome, especially history and social studies. And so it was a really great way of just kind of, finding that love back into just kind of this country that's now mine, and being able to kind of bring that to that next generation. But then after some of that time in the classroom, recognized that there was just a lot of different skill gaps with a lot of the kids that I was working with, and thought that I might be able to help address that in a more informal learning setting, some things that would allow for kids to have more opportunity to kind of directly engage in some of their skill gaps, and then also help kids who needed more enrichment. How do I help them kind of build those next blocks forward in a way that was affordable and accessible? And so I was actually with an after-school program that was working with the first piece of ed tech I've ever used in some of my supports called Success Maker. And it was came out of these two folks out of Stanford, but it was adopted into a program called SCORE, which was a subsidiary of Kaplan way back when. And I was running these centers that allowed for me to work with kids from K through 12, really focused on identifying skill gaps and building up confidence. And I think those were the two big things that for me that really, working in the classroom was great and it was amazing, but being able to focus really individually with those handful of folks that were there with me, I knew their names, I knew what they were into, I knew their families. Like I had a really deep connection with these kids, and I can really, with the tech, understand kind of where were their gaps and help to fill in some of the instructional areas that we can kind of reinforce and rebuild those skills. And so that became a big part of how I fell kind of into the ed tech space.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it started with you knowing about a need that wasn't being met and wanting to be part of, helpful in meeting that need for others, which is, I think it's inspiring for a lot of us.
Well, and for so many young kids, I mean, when we talk about, kids, like, do they like school? Do they not like school? A lot of the feeling of how I feel about school is going to be about my confidence in success at school. If I'm decent at math and English language arts, math, science, school's great. Yeah, I enjoy school. I also have my friends there. But if the academics are challenging, I don't really want to go. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just one of many things that kids are going through in that experience. And if I could help support in kind of building those blocks up academically, then we're like one step closer.
Right. Well, tell us then how you kind of jumped into the nonprofit sort of media space.
Sure. So like fast forward after that, I was really interested in going into higher education at first. I thought my direction is to be higher education administrator.
I would have loved you as a professor. Yeah, you would have been my favorite professor, I think.
Thanks. Yeah. So I got into a couple different programs, but at the same time, I also was offered a position at a higher education institution. I was like, do I do the program?
Yeah.
Build up debt to do the job that I can start now and then just get paid for it. Yeah. And so I went right into it. But again, same idea. Now that I'm in higher ed, there are a lot of great, incredibly smart students coming in, but again, unprepared. A lot of,
what does that look like for a student to come into higher ed unprepared?
Well, I mean, there's already a lot of struggles for a lot of these kids that are coming into, or young adults coming into higher education. You've already got cultural challenges if they're coming in from, one state or internationally to a completely different new city. It was here in San Francisco.
Sure.
That's a huge culture shock, let alone financial aid, let alone housing, let alone just the differences of communities to navigate. And then you've got your academic expectations.
Yeah.
And
I can't imagine anytime I've traveled to another country, even if it's a country where they speak English and it's my first language, I'm still totally stressed out. Like, I don't feel like I know anything, or if something happened, like, I don't even know how to go to the doctor. Yeah. And that's maybe 2 weeks at the most. But I talk to people all the time who come here for school, and I'm so encouraged and inspired by, having to do school, which I would already complain about because that's hard.
Yeah.
But then having to acculturate or assimilate or however that looks, I don't know.
Oh, on top of that,
or not assimilate and to keep the culture close to identity, depending on how that goes. All of those are questions you have to wrestle with on top of, especially like in the hard sciences. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, those are incredibly challenging. And then academically, you kind of got pushed through a system just to get you there, but weren't fully prepared. So I fell back into my kind of ed tech space, working with a company who was one of 3 chosen way back when. In California, we had an exam called the California High School Exit Exam. It was mandatory to pass it. You can graduate, but you can't walk and get your diploma.
Some people call it Cassie.
Yeah, the Cassie or the Casey.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that name brings me back.
Yeah.
So we were one of 3 approved curriculum or resources, and that resource was also developed to identify skill gaps and rebuild them up so that kids can pass the exam, so they can actually graduate and actually, receive.
It was sort of to like ensure that, because I was a school counselor at that time. Yeah, I remember AB 1802.
That's it.
We had to make sure that kids could get to at least sort of like a sophomore level. I think that some people would say junior, but I think a lot of it was just basic education and making
foundational. That's 7th and 8th grade math and English. Yeah. But applied through the context of like at least like sophomore year.
Yeah. I guess I could have just asked you, because since you worked on it and was an expert at preparing people for it.
Well, in doing that work, one of my goals working with this company, a tech company, obviously we had this appropriated dollar amount that was set to it. And our goal was, how do we get as much of that appropriation to choose our product out of the rest? And so that meant district relationships. That meant making sure that the product was used and used with fidelity to show real change. Yeah. Because that's then where you see, at least through the business context, if it works and it's successful, they reinvest, and that's how you continue to scale forward and grow. And so with that experience in the back of my pocket, working with districts, developing professional development, building teacher confidence. And then, I got married and we're starting to think about a family. And then I found this role at Common Sense, which was everything I was already doing in that role, except my bottom line wasn't how much I brought into the company or the organization. My bottom line was based on service. And focused on
and impact
of media devices. And I sit down for all the big, announcements, from whatever platform. I love technology.
Sure.
I geek out about it, and I was like, oh, I want that. I was like, I can't afford that. But, I'm one of those. And so I was like, this is interesting. Like my love for tech, my love in education. There are real implications. If I have kids, when I have kids, will I be prepared for this? And so now I'm 15 years with the organization. My eldest is 14 years. They literally have grown up at Common Sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like having this job at Common Sense has prepared you more for being a parent and navigating this world? What is it? Are you open to sharing what that looks like at home? You have two kids?
I have two girls, 12 and 14. And they've literally grown up at the organization. They've come in the office. We're an office that really focuses on kids and families. And there are instances where I have to bring my kid, and everyone makes sure I have what I need to make sure my child is safe and comfortable when they were at the office. I'm like, that's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
That or just I don't come in so that I can really focus on my child. But what that allowed me to do was to kind of recognize, there are times where media is it's a great unlock to be able to, spark interest, engage with my kids on something that's really
bad,
fun.
Right?
It's not all created equal. So it's like identifying what is good potentially for my kid at what age, right? I grew up on Sesame Street. I grew up on all these shows that I learned so much.
Same.
Right? How do I find some great shows for them and engage with them in that? But then recognize that now we're seeing all this new kind of tech and the exposure to all these new types of media and technology. And what is that doing for kids? Being able to see that and recognize what can the impact be for my kids growing up, providing them the language, providing them the understanding. Like those were all really important things for me that I could do as they were aging up. I find when I'm talking with families and talking with educators, there's a fear of like, oh, it's too late. They're already so deep into it. Yeah. I just don't know that there's anything we can do. And
what do you tell them? What are the website is full of tips for parents. Yeah, sure. But what are your main...
my main things that I find. So I would say this. When it all comes down to it, what we're really talking about with our kids is how do our values align with the way we represent ourselves in person as well as even online. And if we can really get down to the nuts and bolts of what our values were, our cultural context, our community context, like safety, friendship, honesty. And then if you represent it back to these tools and like, do I feel safe on this? Maybe I should question that. Is this being honest with me? What can I do to really confirm that or not? Actually building those values into the way you discuss media and tech in your relationship with it, how you explore new aspects of technology, it makes it, one, more approachable, but two, it gives you a foundation that you can parent with and not feel like you have to know every single thing.
Yeah, but the thing you do have to know and have insight on is who you are and who you want to be.
Yeah, sure. There's some of that. But I think there's like foundation still to...
But that's like the hardest thing.
I mean, that is sure. I mean, because they're developing forward and trying to figure out... Well, I think there's two things, though. There is who do you want to be online and who are you? Yeah. Right? And so I think understanding those two things...
But that seems like it would be miserable and create so much dissonance to have two different personas.
Well, I guess it just depends on what your intention is. I mean, if as an individual, like as a father, as someone who wants to represent my community, my culture, and just family, who I am here in this interview, this is me, right? But if I were there are times where I dabbled in acting and all that stuff. You put on a persona,
sure,
right, for that particular thing. And for some folks, they put on a persona for their product or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
How much do you help your kids recognize this is a persona that's on there? They've developed it to entertain you.
Yeah, I noticed you're not using the word brand because that seems bleak. But
yeah, I know it's really hard. But I mean, we hear that it's like a blanketed term that we've all kind of just adopted on, like, what is your brand?
Yeah.
But really, you're creating something that you're looking to productize or sell or being recognized for. And then there's
you're not just on there to hang out.
There's you that your friends and family know, right? And you keep that close.
Yeah.
And if anything, especially if you're someone who's really out there in the public, keeping that that personal persona close to you, friends and family, that almost helps you recognize who are my people versus who are my fans or my stans or whatever it is, right?
Great. Glad you brought up being a stan. And I think I just want to interject and see if Hannah, who is our resident Gen Z person, she's 24, grew up online, and did you have two or more than one persona?
Probably. I've never associated with that, but there, in middle school, that was like my peak of social media use. So I'm sure that I did, but I also was terrified of it.
Yeah, no. I mean, the whole Finsta idea, they still call it, they may not call it a Finsta anymore, but the idea of...
They do.
Yeah, so that secondary is kind of an explorative persona oftentimes. It's not meant to be mean. Sometimes
you try to find your identity, and that makes sense.
And do so under a little bit of a guise of, this particular account, right?
And so many times the way we find our identity is by rebelling against every authority we know for at least a little while.
Yeah.
So
and
that makes sense.
You're right. It's developmentally appropriate for kids through their age and stage to try and figure out their identity, to figure out who they are. And we're living at a place where we used to just do that roaming around the communities and just hanging out. I think that was a little
safer. I mean, if you talk to someone like Jonathan Haidt, he's going to say, don't explore your identity on Instagram because other people are going to exploit that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the same time, then we're also, as parents, not letting our kids out to explore out, at playgrounds alone with their friends.
Yeah, he would also say that. Yeah,
So it's like, if it's developmentally expected for our kids to communicate with each other, collaborate, figure out their identities, but we're also not allowing them to do that in real worlds, where are they going to do it? They're going to need to find trusted spaces to do it.
Sure.
So how do you navigate those trusted spaces? How do you put down your computer as a parent and say, we're going to go out and I'm going to make sure that this happens, but I'm also under deadline because now we're also in this new economy where our own lives are also dictated by staying connected. And so you really have to start kind of hashing out your truths in your family. That's
such a good point. And I think we got early on at Wellness Together, we would get invited to schools and to communities and to give a presentation just kind of how do you help your kids, get through this modern age? And, are they overwhelmed? Are they stressed out? How do you know what's too much when it comes to symptoms of depression or anxiety? When do you seek help? But one of the stats that I used in every presentation was from Common Sense Media, and it was about child screen time, which I know now screen time is almost kind of ubiquitous and it's hard to measure, but you had some great stats in the study that you all did and put out. And I think it was kids 8 to 16, if I remember this correctly. I haven't done the presentation for a while, but I think it was kids 8 to 16 had maybe around 6 hours of personal screen time a day. And you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the parents of 8 to 16-year-olds, and this was, maybe 2017, 18 when we were doing this, they had close to 8 hours.
Yeah.
So it begs the question, and the parents who came there to find out what's wrong with my kid, or is that, they would, what might be happening. This was personal screen time. This wasn't school or work.
Yep. Just this personalized screen time.
Maybe your kids aren't getting a need met if you're glued to your screen.
Yeah. So there's two things there. So one, we're still doing that research. It's actually a longitudinal study that we continue to do every 3 to 4 years. There's a 0 to 8 study, and then there's an 8 to 18 study.
Oh, okay.
And so we just released our most recent 0 to 8 in February.
Okay.
I think an interesting stat from that is from lockdown COVID, there was a huge jump in screen time, which we expect because of the situation.
Yeah.
But you imagine if we got our stuff together, that number probably went down. for 0 to 8, and it has not. That number is actually maintained. It hasn't grown, but it's maintained in terms of that amount of time. And the way they're spending their time has really switched from long form to short video to video games. And that's where they're spending a lot more of their time, especially young boys. 8 to 18, that number actually, after you saw that study, probably 3 or 4 years later, that study jumped up to about 8 hours, 8 plus, for 8 to 18s for personalized time. And that was, realizing that they multitask all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so
which isn't really a thing we know from
which we know is not
psychology.
A thing. You're just swapping out really fast. And what is that doing now to the way you actually process information?
Yeah.
But parents and caregivers were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Spending that time. So now there's how do you help a child navigate and balance effectiveness and the impact of screens and the type of content that they're getting from that screen? And then how do we self-regulate ourselves as adults that are role modeling this or supposed to be role modeling?
It's hard. And the same idea with actually that same presentation, after that, we would show Tristan Harris from Center for Humane Tech and the interview he did on PBS NewsHour, where he says, just a few clips where he says, this puts something on life's menu that's always sweeter than real life.
Yeah.
And we would look at our phone. At that time, it was 150 times a day. I think it's only gone up.
Yeah. It's only gone up, and it continues to, especially with just the way that these tools are built and these patterns that are built to keep us locked in.
We're here in San Francisco. We're doing some these shows we're at the Common Sense Media Summit. Mm-hmm. It's the second year, I believe.
Correct.
That it's happened. Year. It has quickly become by far one of my favorite places to go as far as a conference or a summit or somewhere to go and meet with other people about real solutions to actually maybe do something to impact the childhood mental health crisis that we're facing.
Yeah.
Tell us about the summit and how being in the Bay Area, because you're based here.
Yeah, you're based here in San Francisco.
Being in the Bay Area and talking about media use with all some of the world's biggest companies.
Sure.
What is that like to be, sort of almost like a conscience?
Yeah. So I think what's really amazing about the organizations we've placed ourselves in this position of, these are incredible opportunities to be partners with some of these big organizations, big companies, but we're also not going to hesitate from testifying at Congress or our local legislation the impact of some of these tools if they're not making any real kind of core changes in the way that they, hook our kids in that dark pattern or addictive nature. So we stand really firm in the position of tech is amazing, but we need to also recognize that tech has its flaws. So how are we really, being able to build critical thinking and how the way that we navigate these things? Because we also don't want to just raise a generation of cynical, kids. Right?
Yeah,
everything is bad, everything is wrong.
Sure, yeah. Well, but negativity, I think, does sell, which, we heard from CEO of Pinterest yesterday about how they had tuned their algorithm to good and lost money, but then eventually came out on top.
Over that time of having to kind of readjust the experience of the market.
So it can be done.
Totally. Yeah. So I think it's great to be in San Francisco because so many of these individuals are here. It's very much a community of people that actually are really connected and committed to seeing families thrive. And so how do you resolve that narrative as someone who's creating tech and the impact on the families that you want to serve or you say you want to serve? Being here in San Francisco, this summit, really our goal is how do we bring educators, administrators, thought leaders, policymakers, developers all into one room and really center the context of the future of our kids and families are going to be determined on the conversations we have in this room, even more so on the actions we take after we leave this room. Put it all out on the table. Let's talk about and share, and let's see where are some real opportunities for connecting. How can foundations fund the work that's doing good work so that we can see more of that? How do youth spaces actually provide real insight that's taken seriously and applied into the way that we direct policy or access to programs? And how does technology catch up with the need of the community? They're leaps and bounds on the tech, but they're far behind with where we need them to be in terms of centering youth experience and the impact of that youth experience.
How do you explain people coming together around and people that a lot of times probably wouldn't come together? I mean, you had the CEO of YouTube, you had some journalists coming in, asking some tough questions.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I was just thankful that someone's doing this because I don't see it very often.
Yeah.
It's usually, okay, well, if YouTube's going to be here, then they have to sponsor the event and we're not going to ask any tough questions, you know. But you all seem to have, I think, for a number of reasons. I mean, Secretary Hillary Clinton was here both days.
Yeah.
Interviewing people on stage, kind of letting her conscience out, what greater good couldn't look like.
Yeah.
And from her point of view, and doing an excellent job, very inspiring. How do you get all these people to come together and hang out and like at least for this amount of time in person?
For the summit itself, it's really important to have these critical conversations. These critical conversations really come with a foundation of trust and recognizing that we are not necessarily going to agree on all things, but if there's a commitment in wanting to understand where do the dots actually align, where are the through lines of opportunity, where can we help move that needle, then let's try and figure those things out. And there are some great personal relationships that have obviously been fostered in having these kind of tough conversations, like before the summit even came together, but recognizing that when we get up there, this isn't just something to perform. We have real questions with real interest from real people, and they're not going to be softballs. But that's with an intent, because I think there needs to be real intent in how we solve these issues.
So one of the things that probably every conference and get together, summit, whatever you want to call it, what they need is a call to action. And Jim Steyer, your founder and co-CEO, he listed out some of the calls to action today for us. They're very grand and I think a great place to be focused right now as we consider the effects of technology and AI. The first one was kind of guaranteeing every child's right to tech safety and privacy. Do you have any thoughts on how that might happen?
Well, I mean, I think one of the ways that the organization's trying to do this is working with policymakers across the aisle, which this is, when we talk about privacy, safety, and the impact of social media and technology on our kids, it's a bipartisan issue. But being able to then pass policies that actually really meet those needs without kind of being circumvented by big lobbying efforts and dollars that are coming in to stop that. I mean, this is why there are so many different, especially on states, many states have instated privacy laws that were very specific around the privacy of kids that are being, these tools are being developed for them. But then we've also got big, broader policy around like Kids Design Act and Kids Online Safety Act, the COSA Act. So these things had large bipartisan support for like years now, but unfortunately just end up not getting passed, when the big votes come. And
because of this, probably because of the strong lobbying and the support, that it's a lot of money to be made, and that must feel somewhat disappointing every now and then to be working so hard and to kind of see a system that can work against that.
Yeah, it can be, and it is. I think we've seen a lot of great wins, however, working with a number of different state leaders that are doing this. New York has passed a number of policies that have been really focused on the accountability of these platforms, not misusing student information, not being able to provide some of these design aspects for kids that are under certain age ranges in their state. And so that does really push them to have to think about, okay, are we just going to do this for one state, or do we have to look at this across the board? And many other states, again, not just New York, many other states are passing similar types of policies that are really looking at kind of pulling back the way that social media and other platforms are present in the lives of kids.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk briefly to our Attorney General here in California, Rob Bonta.
Yeah.
And I know, and also his wife, who's in the state legislature, and she's been putting forward a number of pieces of legislation to kind of help with this.
Yeah.
But he talked to me about Stop the Scroll and kind of how he's working with New York and some of the other states to do that. Yeah. Is that something that you all are involved in?
Yeah. So we work really closely with Attorney General Bonta and a number of other legislators, really to kind of help inform them with how to try and navigate as they build up these potential bills that they provide in. And so we're always kind of working in the background, really looking at how we help find and support these legislators that want to do good and make sure that they are informed with kind of real insights from the work and the research.
One of the other action items from today, because today was the last. It's kind of like Jim sent everyone off and said, this is how we're going to change the world. The other one that I was very interested in was we're going to prevent a children's mental health crisis, which at first I saw and was like, okay, a little too late. But then it keeps going and says, and end the youth mental health crisis.
Yeah.
So I liked that he, both.
It's kind of like a big audacious goal, but it's incredibly important that we take the steps in that direction. I think, mental health and wellness has been an issue before we've even been able to identify it across, communities. I mean, in many communities, we don't even talk about it, but it's definitely been a conversation that's now been accepted into kind of our space, and recognizing that there's a lot of mental health challenges and issues that we need to be really thoughtful about. But now, especially with the advent of this technology that is really kind of beating kids down with the way they're supposed to look, the way they're supposed to act, their deficiencies versus everyone else's life is better than them. Of course, that's going to compound in the way that we think about ourselves.
Everyone else's persona that they chose to share is better than
a developmental brain, right, whose whole focus is, I don't want to miss out.
Right.
I want to be connected to my peers. But
that's how we've survived for thousands of years.
100%.
Yeah.
And
fear of missing out.
We've got these platforms that are telling us, different. We've got platforms that essentially are feeding us information that may not necessarily be real, or like something that we could actually feel connected to, but it's telling me, oh, this is how I'm supposed to act. So it's hard for a child to navigate, and especially harder when we've got tools that were called social tools, but yet we still feel so distant from each other.
I feel like it's so easy to just become content now, instead of, like you said earlier, knowing your values, having some insight. Insight is something that takes some solitude. It takes deep relationships. It takes people reflecting your value as a human being back to you. And I think that, watching what's happening, I don't know if it's as simple as we're programmed, we want to survive over thousands of years, and we're programmed to have a negative bias because negative information keeps us aware. I don't want to be ostracized from the group because I want the group and need the group to survive and to feel happy and healthy. But now we've been able to sort of put out there so much information, a lot of it negative. A lot of algorithms are tuned towards negative because
keeps your attention.
Keeps people's attention.
Yeah.
Is that what you're seeing? Am I missing a part of what's happening? I mean, is it that simple? Because it seems like if we were to trade isolated screen time with depth of relationship and time with each other, then would that help?
It needs to be a community agreement. I mean, so the work that we do, the work that I've been really focusing my last 10 out of the 15 years on is really, how do we develop a whole community approach to addressing these issues? And we've been doing a lot of work around how do we get this information out to families? Well, in many other families and communities, is this on their radar as something to think about when I'm thinking about like putting food on the table or just rent? So it's like, where does media and balance impact
Get to the end
my
of a
kids?
long day, you work maybe two jobs.
Making two jobs, odd hours. Like my kids are asleep already. I'm just glad they're home. So they watch TV
hungry.
All day. 100, we're straight. So, there's that reality that context to recognize.
Brought that up.
So as much as we want to work with families and reach those communities, we each have to find really different ways to connect with policy, community leaders, parents, families, to get that message out there. And then the other way that we do that is through working directly with educators.
That's what I was going to say. You've done a great job, and a lot of what you do in particular is creating these relationships that, school is still a place for community. It's still a place where you go and you have the same people every day, and you know them, and you have developed some relationships and been able to help them. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that we know with schools is there's a huge focus, obviously, and just in terms of the academic success side of schools.
Sure.
But there's the whole child that schools are really focusing on.
Yeah.
How do we prepare our kids to be a part of the communities that they are living within, that they are working within, and they are innovating within?
Mm-hmm.
And so as we hope that we can provide some guidance in like informational or instructional tools that could be great to use in the classroom versus like when you just don't need tech at all, if you're trying to really focus on, how you communicate with each other or providing feedback or getting comfortable with being able to kind of like, speak in front of a group of people. Like those are things that obviously you don't need tech for. But we know that tech is a big part of the way that kids are living and learning. And so we need to be having those kinds of conversations just as much in the classroom because we are using tools for instruction and for learning. And it's also part of that whole child. How do we help them to develop these skills when they're using media to identify what's good, what's not good?
Mm-hmm.
How do I validate truth? What are the impacts of the way that I'm using this particular tool? And how do we develop then transferable skills so that when they go home, they're applying them 9:00 at night if they so happen to be able to bring their phone into the bedroom with them, alone? Are they still making those decisions?
Merve, this is so important. I mean, I honestly can't think of a more important thing right now other than, physical health and medical, issues that we need to take care of. But you are, and I, unfortunately, almost every word I can say here has been politicized, but you're almost inoculating or vaccinating or insulating kids and letting them find out who they are so that they can make actual choices online versus just reacting constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is I say this all the time when I'm talking with parents and educators, like hope is not a solution. We can't just hope they're going to get it right. We can't just hope that they're going to make the right decision or fall into the right, video.
Mm-hmm.
We have to provide them tools to help guide them to really think critically about what am I intending to do here? Would I want this to go out further by posting it this way? Who am I hurting here potentially? Right. And so it's those small, like they're like fractions of a second of consideration, but pausing to think can make a real impact on the way that our kids make decisions online and go counter to the way that the platforms have been designed. Quick, fast, rapid, like, share, grow, expand.
Mm-hmm.
And if they maintain that cadence, it proliferates these things even faster. So until they bring it back and actually design for them in the way that they should be thinking more critically, we need to build these skills into our kids in their day-to-day lived experiences so that they can be part of a community that really holds these as parts of their values. We value communication and like effective collaboration. So we're going to show that in the way that we send messages to each other, and again, we can have an open discussion with each other about that. I think what's really interesting is, especially even through a lot of parents, they have their own kind of ideas and goals in the way that they talk about this at home. And then they have that play date or that sleepover.
Yeah.
And for some reason, they tiptoe around. So what are going to be the screen rules at the house?
Yeah.
And it's like, these should be normal conversations.
We don't want to shame somebody, and you want your kid to have friends,
sure.
But at the same time, you don't want them coming back and saying, I just saw something horrific.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same time, it's like, well, they're going and they're playing and they're on, like they're all watching YouTube together. Yeah. I can go do my thing. So we can't have both. We can't say that we don't want them to be there and explore and unfortunately, like maybe see a video they're not supposed to.
If you have small kids, your thing needs to be that.
Yeah, exactly. So
and not to.
It's kind of a call out.
I'm not perfect, and as a parent, I understand wanting to do other stuff.
It's a kind of a hard one for me sometimes. I gotta like call out families. I gotta call out myself. I'll even share a personal situation where we're just getting mad at my daughters and like, y'all are spending way too much time in the restroom. You need to get out, get your work done. And then I was like, oh, what are they doing? My wife's like, they have their phones in there with them. I'm like, what are they doing? And then my daughter's literally, it's like, Dad, you bring your phone into the restroom too. Like, and then you think back, I'm like, there are plenty of YouTube videos that tell us why that is just not hygienic.
Right.
So maybe we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, gross.
And then there's the, so now we've got the no phones in the restroom thing, but that's a me problem. I was role modeling that. And I just called them out on something that I was essentially showing them what to do.
Oh, they were learning.
Yeah. So we oftentimes maybe, need to recognize how are we effectively being role models to our kids in the way that we are navigating these spaces ourselves.
How do you summon the energy to be a self-reflective parent, especially right now when things seem so hard and things seem and feel bad?
It's hard. You have to remind yourself to take a pause and to take that self-reflection. And you also have to be ready to embrace when you get called out and not be mad about it. I think that's one thing that we've found in our household is these are not conversations we have only when something goes wrong. These are conversations we have daily. And in doing so allows for when something is challenging or hard or uncomfortable, they know that when they come to me, it's not that they're going to be met with some kind of punitive reaction.
Sure. Well, if you didn't take that moment and be like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like they would never, that was hopefully also a moment where they were learning like, well, all right.
This is how we address these things.
Yeah.
We figure it out, we discuss, we find the right pathway forward, and we do it as a family. Right?
You've given them a voice too, to be part of the solution in the family. To kind of be like, well, maybe you should try it.
And the more consistent we can do that, then the more apt they will be to come to you when there is a problem.
So you're talking about vulnerability?
Yeah.
Merv? I don't know. I don't know.
A little bit,
I don't know. Last thing we want is our kids telling us what's right and wrong for us. Yeah.
I mean, you really want to know what's going on in their lives. Kids really love to tell you when you don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, in your family and generally in the schools, do you feel like kids are receptive to these things?
So I would say in general, kids want to do good. They want to be with their peers. They want to be able to feel accepted. And it's when they don't feel accepted or they feel like they don't have anyone in, that's when it's easy to kind of help them point fingers at it's someone else's fault, right? Yeah. So kids genuinely, they want to be able to figure out how do I do this in a way that allows me to have real solid connections with people. And in terms of talking about these issues, they love talking about technology. They love talking about social media. They love talking about the people they follow and why. And it's up to us to be able to, one, actually take the time to try and understand why. And then two, how do we bring those conversations into something that also meets the need for, at least in schools, kind of like that academic rigor, right? So if you like talking about a certain topic or a person, that's our essay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Dive deep into it, right? Provide them the structure. They provide the subject matter.
How do we remember, Merv, as parents and as people ourselves, that connecting with someone via asynchronous videos or following them online isn't really connecting? And even though it feels like it's meeting a need, it's not. How do we... Do you have a way that you remind yourself of that, or we can organize our day differently?
We say exactly what you just asked. And we let them know, it's like, all right, so we can even relate to having like conversations with their friends. They love texting each other. I was like, so would you rather just text with each other, or do you want to go hang out? And we can go to the park, and I'll go out there with you guys. Yeah. You guys can go hang out. Yeah. But let's go to the park. I mean, they recognize there is a difference between in-person versus separation, but sometimes the closest thing you have is being connected digitally, because sometimes that closest thing you have that you're connected to is in another state. Because
that's a legit need and desire to be texting, to be connected and feel loved, and like I said, reflected back that you're valuable and someone that people want to know about. And so giving other ways and just being intentional about that. You mentioned that you help educators kind of do this. Educators, a lot of us, I still consider myself an educator, being a former school counselor. A lot of us welcome that help and need people who are working hard all day, like yourself, to find out what's actually going to be helpful. And I know that you put out information. How do people get engaged with the content you're putting out so that we can sort of turn the tide and hopefully help people realize and value those in-person connections?
Yeah. So in person, I love that I actually have a team of individuals that are spread throughout the country that are able to put this kind of work directly into school districts and really learn from them around how does this align to your needs? Because districts, they have certain compliances that they have to consider, and and they want it to be more than a check mark, right? They really want to have some real lasting change and impact for their kids. So how does this align to the things first that they need to get done? how do we ensure that it's accessible?
How are you bringing value to them? How are you going to help their community through the schools?
Yeah. How do we make it valuable to the educator? It's got to be relevant, right, to them. It can't feel like one more thing, even though they know it's a nice to do. Like, how do we communicate down this? No, this is a need to do. And it's going to help in us being able to do kind of our big job around get to really core, fun, engaging instructional content, because we've dealt with kind of like the shadow of the pressure from, the social post that kid came into the classroom with from something that was fired off at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So
gosh.
really being able to kind of meet them where they're at. And so for us, we've got great content that's turnkey that you can use in the classroom. Any educator can take it. It's written and meant to be something that they can press play on a video or go through an activity and get kids to reflect. Again, they love to talk about these issues already. So that's already there in place. But we do need to make sure that they understand, am I even the one that should be teaching these things? Well, actually, you can be. And so we've got a number of professional development available for the educators. It's important for them to know where they stand with digital citizenship, with media literacy and responsibility. How do they use it? What do they get stuck on?
That's a great point. And I have all the respect in the world for educators, and my wife's a teacher. But sometimes I'll hear stories about teachers who regularly use the online curriculum and go and sit at their desks for, and sometimes in a block schedule, that's 90 minutes.
Yeah. Of just straight, they're at their desk and their students are just kind of on a device, kind of following what's out there. And that, unfortunately, is kind of a symptom of getting too reliant on the technology. I think, especially after the pandemic and lockdown, that became kind of our way of trying to build some kind of consistency in instruction, being that we were in a space where no one was in the classroom. So how do we find some kind of way to kind of drive them through? And then now that we are in the classroom, why are we still essentially having Zoom classrooms in our classroom where our kids are just doing things independently through a particular platform? And I know my kids have the same feedback with that too. That's for them, that's just, I can just sit in front of a computer at home if this was the case.
Sure.
Right?
Well, they know that they're not getting a need met. And, education's not designed to actually remove people from a job that they're not doing well.
Well, I mean, I think we also just have to really kind of look at it in the eye and recognize, what are we trying to measure for success in the classroom right now? And unfortunately, the things that we have that measure success for us, and these formative assessments that measure success for us, they're kind of based on these big, standardized outcomes, and not necessarily how do we find the right way and the right time to have kids kind of adapt and make real some of these learning ideas and skills. And so sometimes, unfortunately, it's just, if you need to meet those needs to just kind of hit those base outcomes, the tool will do it for you.
Yeah, I feel like the best teachers, and tell me if you had an experience like this, for me, it was people who loved the subject they were teaching, but also loved kind of giving that love away.
Yeah.
And so if they, for example, it was history, and they would spend a lot of time and effort, and the whole class, you were engaged with them and could sort of catch, the commitment and the passion that they had to history. And that's, I thought history was boring before I had Mr. Coolman
and kind of made it real for you.
Year. Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, I was like, these are real people that experience real things. But I think, it's hard because there are some educators who've gone into it because they love a subject, but they don't necessarily love people. And that's hard.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that is hard.
With the information age, I would say that person, that teacher, is not as relevant as they used to be, because now there are a lot of ways people can learn information.
Yeah.
But you have to engage with the human part of the humans in your class. Be human with other humans in order to, that's why, around the campfire, our whole civilization's built on it.
Yeah. On both ends. It's about, how do you find that love for learning and instruction? Like for me, I'm a lifelong learner. And in this space, I think I'll give you an example. So we've math teachers have been actually teaching digital citizenship. We're like, how are you teaching our lessons in a math class? Oh, yeah, here's what we do. We have them actually take out their devices and they go in and they show us essentially how much screen time they spent and how it's been broken down. And they plug it into a graph. And then as a class, we can look at all the data and look at, all right, how much time are we spending with gaming? How much time are we doing social media? And then they don't even have to go deep. They can be like, oh my God, we spend a lot of time online, guys. Like, so what does that mean for you? Like, and so it's a way of bringing in, okay, let's number crunch now. If we were to like move percentages down or whatever like that, what could the impact be in the way that you now navigate if you actually brought this level down? So you brought the conversation through the context of a space that you're comfortable with.
You didn't shame them. You didn't, because how are we going to give kids phones and then shame them for using them all the time? You know,
I mean, I know I gave my kids phones is for safety. And that then also led to connection. And now that connection, they're not on social media, but they've got the connection that they need. And they always ask for social media. I'm like, well, what do you hope to get out of it? Well, I just don't want to feel left out on like the memes and everything like that. I'm like, all right.
Gosh, but Merv, you said, I think everyone needs to hear what you just said.
Like
when they say I want to, because every parent, no parent knows what to say when they say, I want to be on social media.
Yeah.
And you asked another question.
Yeah. What do you want to get out of it? Like, what's your intention behind it?
That's so good because then that puts them back in control. It allows them to develop and grow as a human.
Yeah.
And you're just asking them to not get taken advantage of, essentially.
Yeah. And when they tell me the things that they want, oh, let's get you those solutions. Yeah. But let's do it on a platform that I'm more comfortable with because there's all these other things that I don't need you, I don't want you, and you don't want to fall into these types of patterns that they weren't built for you. So let's get you the things that you need. So there are other tools out there that can get them access to like pinning kinds of like art that they're really into or collections of videos that they're really into without having to dive into.
Or a messaging app that is just messaging. That can be helpful.
That's even native. It's called texting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you were to design an invitation, a short invitation for parents, I want to do this quick exercise for parents, students, and educators on where they can get these resources and what they should do first. Give them one step to interface and to engage with Common Sense Media in your work. Yeah. First, we'll go parents, students, educators.
So for parents, I would say if you're using social media, follow our Instagram because what we're doing on our Instagram account is to take what we provide on the site outside of the ratings and reviews, but more the guided ways to navigate media and technology and provide them in short, consumable ways that you can kind of like take and hopefully try to practice the next time your kid comes back.
It's a great reminder.
Into the house.
Mix it in there. Right? Mix it in with
and we're using a platform like social media.
Yeah.
But, when you got what you need, get off of it. Yeah. For educators, I would say you don't have to be like a pro or have all the knowledge around these issues, but you can still have a conversation with your kids about these general issues and how they might impact the classroom. So what I would do is come into the curriculum. So you go to commonsense.org and go to the education section and then just click digital citizenship. Find a lesson in your grade band and maybe just start with media balance, something that's low entry, but very easy to recognize like what media is and the relationship to it. And that could give you some real context to the kids in your classroom and how you then apply that into their next writing assignment or maybe even into communications and the history of how we've communicated and how it's changed, right? There's really great ways you can apply it into your own context to kind of meet that need. I think for students, I think it's recognizing, and we saw this at the summit, sometimes you may not know kind of where to go to kind of get some insights or guidance. And we know that students want to turn to other students like them who have kind of been through this or know how to navigate it. It's kind of a bigger,
normalize and validate their situation.
It's kind of a bigger step to take, but I think it is a step that's worth taking, which is, try to find the communities even within your own community, if they exist, to get into conversation around these things and normalize the conversations that I feel pressure to do certain things online. Do you?
Do you mean face-to-face conversations?
I mean, it would be amazing if they can and if they have it.
Yeah. They're around each other.
They're around each other. Might as well, but be intentional with it. Otherwise, there are spaces where, kids are talking about these things online, but preferably, bring your friends together, ask that question, and you'll be amazed that you're not the only one. But we oftentimes feel like we're on an island of concern, and we all have the same concerns. How many of you here, like how many of us here, you've sent a text and you just watch those three dots and like they're not responding. You make up 4 or 5 reasons why they're not
Cognitive
responding.
Distortions.
Exactly.
And they almost always have to do with me being not
my
cool.
own personal insecurity. Yeah, totally. Well, it's
Yeah.
important for kids to recognize, it's not just me.
No.
Like we're all going through this. So how do we just check that at the door?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. And it's something I'm going to take with me. I want to say thank you for all of what you're doing to help us as parents, as people, as a society, as communities, as we build community, because we know we need more of it. Thank you for what you're doing. You've organized it. You're working hard. You've used what I think everyone can see as an incredible talent and ability to communicate for good.
I really appreciate that.
We want to thank you for that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here, and I love the work, and I think it's an opportunity for everyone to be a part of it.
Well, if I can just add, for me, what I'll be taking with me today, and I don't like it. It's already made me upset that I'm going to have to do this, but my own technology use. As a person, as a parent, as a person with limited time and resources, how much I want to be on a screen, I'm going to start asking myself, what am I hoping to get out of this?
Yeah.
And is there another way that I can get that need met that is going to be more helpful for my mental health?
100%. Appreciate that.
Thank you for guiding us through this. Hope to have you on again soon. And thanks for having us at the summit as well.
Oh, I'm here. You let me know.
Okay.
Happy to share.
All right. Thanks, Merve.
Thank you.
Welcome to Marlon Helps, or at least tries, our Q&A segment. If you have any questions that you want to have answered, please send them our way at This Helps Podcast on Instagram, and we would love to feature your questions. So today's episode, we focused on social media and technology and some personal experiences with that. And Marlon, my question is, how can people find balance in their own lives?
I want to make sure everyone knows I didn't know the question before we start. I also want to let everyone know that our producer, Andrea, is on mic with us. And I tried to convince her that wasn't a good idea.
I insisted.
But she said, if I'm going to continue producing the show, the only way I know to make it even better is for me to be there, and I didn't actually have a choice. So
No, here I am, large and in charge.
Actually, I'm glad she's here. And how can they find balance in their own lives?
Yeah.
I talked to someone earlier who had a great 3 things that he said we needed. And you will hear this episode, and I'll give him credit. So when you see it and you hear it, his name is Alex Briscoe, and he's done a lot of work with kids and with mental health, and now with the mental health crisis. And when he talks to kids, he said they really need to be able to do 3 things. They need to know, essentially be able to discern what is media and what is content and what is actually their values and what they think about and feel and like, and insights that they have, or what's a reaction. I'm sort of unpacking it a little bit. He said discern, resist, and find community. Those are the things that we need to do. And if we can get to know ourselves, be aware of what we actually like and dislike, and not be a collection of people sort of who are responding constantly to emotional stimuli that's really made to keep our attention and upset us, then we can take a little bit of time and space. And I think balance begins with having actual space between your thoughts and your actions, and putting together a morning routine, or, a time of day where you actually sit and think and sit with yourself. Because if you don't, there's too many opportunities to keep yourself busy. If one more person if I ask them how they are and they tell me busy,
Mhm.
I'm going to hang up. I'm going to quit the Zoom call because I I feel like I just got offended and slapped in the face by that. That's not a feeling or an emotion or even interesting. So I think people need to take the time, myself included, and the space to consider why they might actually be here on this earth. Some of life's bigger questions.
Do you have that's scary for me to even think about sitting with my thoughts for even 1 minute. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people. Like, do you have practical advice for how to do that?
Wow, that's good. Um, Sometimes, and I think this is what was helpful for me, you almost want to go backwards. You almost want to find community, then you can resist, and then you can discern. Because I think the community gives you the strength and the support, and you can talk about exactly what you just said to me out loud. That's what needs to happen. There's some humility in that. You're admitting it. We all feel that way. Otherwise, you know, some people would have it together, and I've never met anyone who does. Yeah, I think like the whole idea of finding community and meeting that need for relationship, deep, meaningful relationship, and emotional safety, finding other people who are willing to um, also prioritize some face to face hanging out and maybe a regular time, friends that you can call on the phone, actually use the phone app on the phone. I think that actually needs to happen before you have any strength to resist. Because if I'm alone in my thoughts and I don't think I have anyone to call or any close relationships, and I'm not working on those close relationships, then I'm not gonna be able to resist anything. I'm just gonna opt for even pain over the the fear of being alone or insignificant. Because at least with pain, you know you're there,
Mm.
sort of grounding in a way. And I think we choose anxiety and pain without realizing it. And a lot of times when really the need we're looking to get met is significance and meaning, and that only comes through our relationships, even our relationship with ourselves, but you have to have both.
I was listening to something recently and they talked about the experience of feeling bored and how that is crucial to then be able to sit with your feelings. Like it's almost like a prerequisite
Mm-hmm.
because we're so used to filling every moment with something, whether that be a phone. They use the example of sitting at a stoplight and picking up your phone because even in those 2 minutes, it's like your brain wants to keep going.
Yeah, you want to. It's worth it for us to risk death 100 times a day because that is somehow more, you know, it's easier to deal with than what else might be there.
Yeah. But is there something that you have found that works best for you in seeking this balance that people might want and think about even subconsciously?
Yeah, I would say the things that have worked for me are starting right when I get up in the morning. I know what's valuable to me and what I think is important. And it's when I start to react and think about things that I don't think are important. Like if I get up in the morning and watch the news or listen to NPR or read the Times or the Wall Street Journal or something, like everyone else is deciding what's important. And I'm deciding how I feel about what they think is important. But if I choose a book, like a paper book, and also they're not paying us for this, but I use the Calm app. I'm a I'm a Jeff Warren guy. Jay Shetty's good too, but more of a daily trip with Jeff Warren. And you know, I think starting off, he gives you a little bit of guidance. It's only 10 minutes, And then at that point, I kind of realized like not everything's an emergency, like it for like a brief second. And then there's another book I have called The Daily Stoic. And then there's one that's more of a, this is like a dirty word, but it's more like a Christian centered, it's not a Christian nationalist book, which I don't really know what that would be. It's not the Bible, but I think, Timothy Keller wrote a book called like Wisdom for Life, and it's like wisdom from the Bible. That kind of helps me get grounded. And then all of a sudden I'm in this position to be thankful, and even some like prescribed, like forced gratitude. Even if I force myself to do it, it starts to work. Like just think about, okay, what are all the things in my life that I have and that I'm grateful for? The fact that I'm even alive, even contemplating that that's a miracle in and of itself. Like it shouldn't be, like bodies probably shouldn't work the way they do, like as well as they do for this much time. And then I start feeling thankful for my relationships, maybe even think about other relationships that I would like to, put more time and effort into. But it kind of all starts in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, but it sets the tone. By the night, I start like trying to read the Bible, and I end watching like White Lotus or something. So it's a real back and forth.